The transport ship descended through purple clouds that wrapped around the Viridian capital like silk. Inside the vessel, Tae-hyun pressed his hand against the viewing port and watched the alien city grow larger below. Towers of crystal and metal stretched toward the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to float without support. He had studied images of this place for months, but seeing it with his own eyes made his heart beat faster. The landing platform hummed as the ship settled onto it. Tae-hyun adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform one last time before the door slid open. The air outside tasted different, cleaner somehow, with a hint of something sweet he could not name. A group of Viridian officials waited for him, their tall forms casting long shadows in the afternoon light. Ji-woo stood at the front of the group. She was over 7 feet tall, with skin that shimmered faintly blue in the sunlight. Her eyes were large and golden, watching him with an expression he could not read. She wore armor that looked both ceremonial and functional, marked with symbols that indicated high rank. "Welcome to Viridius Prime. Envoy Tae-hyun," she said in perfect English, though her voice carried harmonics that human vocal cords could never produce. "I am Commander Ji-woo. I have been assigned as your liaison during your stay." Tae-hyun bowed in the human manner, then attempted the Viridian greeting he had practiced, placing his fist over his heart and extending his other hand palm up. Ji-woo's expression shifted slightly, something that might have been approval or amusement. "You have studied our customs," she observed. "As much as possible," Tae-hyun replied, "though I understand reading about something and experiencing it are very different things." She gestured for him to follow, and they walked through corridors that seemed carved from single pieces of stone that glowed with their own light. Other Viridians stopped to stare at him as they passed. Some pointed. A few made sounds that his translator struggled to interpret. He felt small among these beings, aware of how fragile he must appear to them. "They are curious," Ji-woo said without looking back at him. "Humans are new to this part of space. Many have never seen one of your kind in person." "What do they think of us?" Tae-hyun asked. Ji-woo was quiet for a moment. "They think you are fragile. Your lifespans are short. Your bodies break easily. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. But you do not think this." He kept his voice neutral, diplomatic. She turned to face him then, and he saw something complex in those golden eyes. "I think it is unwise to judge anything before understanding it fully. That is why I requested this assignment." They reached a large chamber with windows that showed the entire city spreading out below. A table held various foods, some recognizable, others completely alien. Ji-woo gestured for him to sit, and they settled onto chairs that adjusted to their different sizes. "Tell me about Earth," she said, "not the facts from our databases. Tell me what it means to be human." Tae-hyun considered his words carefully. This was why he had been chosen for this mission. Not because he was the strongest or smartest, but because he could speak about humanity in ways that made others understand. "We are a young species," he began. "We have only just reached the stars while you have traveled between them for thousands of years. But we have survived things that should have destroyed us. Plagues that killed half our population, wars that burned entire continents, ice ages and asteroids and famines. We almost went extinct a dozen times in our history." "Many species face such challenges," Ji-woo said. "Yes, but we survived them without advanced technology or help from others. We survived because we refused to give up even when giving up would have been easier. We call it the human spirit, that stubborn refusal to accept defeat." Ji-woo leaned forward slightly. "You speak of this with pride, but also with something else." "Sadness?" Tae-hyun smiled sadly. "Because survival came at a cost. We learned to be hard when we needed to be. We learned that sometimes terrible choices are the only choices. We carry scars from every battle we have ever fought, even the ones we won." "Your species has been at war for most of its existence," Ji-woo said. It was not a question. She had read the reports. "Yes. With nature, with each other, with everything that tried to kill us. Peace is still new to us. We are learning how to live without enemies, but it does not come naturally yet." They talked for hours as the sun set and the city lights began to glow. Ji-woo asked questions about human culture, art, music, and philosophy. Tae-hyun answered honestly, not hiding humanity's flaws or failures. He spoke about the beautiful and terrible things humans had done, about their capacity for both great love and great cruelty. In the following weeks, they met every day. Sometimes in formal settings with other officials present, but often alone. Ji-woo showed him the wonders of Viridian civilization, their gardens that grew crystal flowers, Their libraries containing knowledge from 100 worlds. Their medical facilities that could cure almost any disease. Taehyun shared human things in return. He played music from Earth on a small device he carried. He showed her pictures of mountains and oceans and cities built by human hands. He taught her about human humor, explaining jokes that often failed to translate. She learned to recognize when he was being sarcastic, a concept that confused most Viridians. One evening, they stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The sky was filled with stars, more visible here than they ever were on Earth through its polluted atmosphere. "Your people will never be like us," Jiwoo said quietly. "You will never live as long or grow as tall or build the things we build." "No," Taehyun agreed. "We will not." "But you do not seem troubled by this." He turned to look at her, this alien being who had become something close to a friend. "We measure worth differently than you do. Not by how long we live, but by what we do with the time we have. Not by how strong we are, but by what we are willing to sacrifice for others. We know we are small and weak and temporary. That is exactly why we burn so bright while we are here." Jiwoo was silent for a long time, staring at the stars. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. "Perhaps we have forgotten how to burn at all." Something changed between them in that moment. Something neither of them had planned or expected. In the spaces between their conversations, in the comfortable silences they shared, something was growing that went beyond diplomacy or curiosity. It was the beginning of everything that would follow. The joy and the pain, the love and the loss, the sacrifice that would light up the darkness like a fallen star. 6 months had passed since Taehyun arrived on Viridius Prime, and the city no longer felt strange to him. He knew which streets led to the market where vendors sold fruit that glowed in the dark. He recognized the sound of the evening bells that rang from the crystal towers. He had learned to sleep under 3 moons instead of 1. What he had not learned was how to stop thinking about Jiwoo. She visited him in the human embassy compound almost every day now. Sometimes she brought reports about the trade negotiations between their governments. Sometimes she brought nothing at all except her presence. They would talk for hours about everything and nothing, sharing meals that combined human and Viridian foods in strange but interesting ways. Today she arrived earlier than usual. Taehyun was in the garden, trying to grow tomatoes in alien soil. The plants looked sad and small compared to the massive Viridian vegetation around them. "You are stubborn," Jiwoo said, watching him work. "That soil is wrong for your plants. The light is wrong. The temperature is wrong. Yet you continue trying." Taehyun smiled without looking up. "Humans are good at making things grow in places they should not. We are persistent like weeds. I have been thinking about that word you taught me. Persistence." She sat down on a bench that had been specially made for her size. "In Viridian, we have no direct translation. The closest word means something like continuing without wisdom." "Maybe that is accurate," Taehyun said, finally sitting beside her. "Wise people know when to quit. Humans often do not." Jiwoo's golden eyes studied his face with an intensity that made his breath catch. "Is that why you are still here, Taehyun? Persistence without wisdom?" He met her gaze and decided to risk the truth. "I am here because leaving would mean not seeing you anymore. That feels worse than any difficulty of staying." She was quiet for so long that he thought he had made a terrible mistake. Then she reached out and took his hand in hers. Her fingers were longer than his, her skin cool and smooth. The touch sent electricity through him. "My family wishes to meet you," she said softly. "They have questions about your intentions." "My intentions?" "Regarding me." "Regarding us." She squeezed his hand gently. "There are rumors, Taehyun. People talk. They see how much time we spend together. They see how I look at you." His heart was racing now. "How do you look at me?" "Like you are sunlight," she whispered. "Like you are something precious and temporary that I must memorize before it fades." They sat in silence, hands clasped, while the alien wind moved through the garden. Finally Taehyun spoke. "Will your family approve?" Jiwoo laughed, but it sounded sad. "No. They will list all the logical reasons why this is impossible. You will age while I barely change. You will die in what feels like moments to my people. Your body is fragile. Our biology is incompatible. You cannot eat half the foods I eat. I cannot breathe easily in your atmosphere." The list goes on and on. "Those are all true things," Taehyun said quietly. "Yes, but they do not change how I feel." She turned to face him fully. "Do you know what frightens me most? Not that you will die young by my standards, but that I will have known you and loved you, and then I will live for centuries more without you. That seems like a very long time to miss someone. Then maybe do not love me, Taehyun said, though the words hurt to speak. Maybe your family is right. Maybe logic should win. Jiwoo's expression changed to something fierce. I have lived by logic for 90 years. Logic has made me an excellent commander and a proper Viridian noble. But logic has never made me feel like this. Like I am discovering color for the first time. Like the universe is larger and stranger and more beautiful than I ever imagined. She stood up suddenly and began pacing. Humans have a saying, do you not? About burning bright? It is better to burn out than to fade away, Taehyun quoted. Yes, that Viridians fade away. We live so long that we become cautious with our time. We save ourselves for centuries that may never come. We forget how to burn it all. She stopped and looked at him. But you are teaching me. You are showing me what it means to live each day like it matters. Taehyun stood and walked to her. Even standing close, the top of his head barely reached her shoulder. He had to look up to meet her eyes. I love you, he said simply. I know it is complicated. I know it will be difficult. I know it will hurt eventually. But I love you anyway. Jiwoo made a sound that was half laugh and half sob. She bent down and rested her forehead against his, a gesture of intimacy in Viridian culture. Then we will burn together, she said. Meeting her family was as difficult as she had predicted. They gathered in a great hall in the ancestral home. Dozens of Viridians who all shared Jiwoo's elegant features. Her mother, Haewon, spoke first. You are the human envoy, she said, her tone making it sound like an accusation. The one who has captured my daughter's attention so completely that she neglects her duties and forgets her position. I have neglected nothing, mother, Jiwoo said sharply. My work continues as always. Your work, yes. But what of your future? What of the family line? What of all the plans we have made? Haewon gestured at Taehyun. This creature will be gone in the blink of an eye. You will be left with nothing but memories and grief. Those memories will be worth the grief, Jiwoo said firmly. Her brother Jae-sung stepped forward. He was taller than Jiwoo and wore military decorations that marked him as a decorated warrior. I have studied human history, he said to Taehyun. Your people are violent. You have spent most of your existence killing each other. Why should we trust you with our sister? Taehyun did not flinch. You are right. We have been violent. We have made terrible mistakes, but we have also learned from them. We have built peace from war. We have chosen to reach out to the stars with open hands instead of closed fists. I cannot promise I am perfect, but I can promise I will love your sister with everything I am for as long as I live. As long as you live, Haewon repeated. A human lifetime. What is that to us? 80 years? 100. It is all I have, Taehyun said simply. But I will make those years count. The family argued for hours. Some were curious about humans and asked Taehyun questions. Others were openly hostile. A few seemed sad, as if watching Jiwoo make a mistake they could not prevent. Through it all, Jiwoo stood beside him, her hand in his, refusing to back down. Finally, Haewon raised her hand for silence. I cannot support this, she said. But I see that my daughter has made her choice. I only hope she does not regret it when she stands alone centuries from now. 3 months later, they were married in a ceremony that blended both cultures. Taehyun wore traditional Korean clothes modified to fit Viridian aesthetics. Jiwoo wore armor polished until it shone like starlight, with flowers from Earth woven into her hair. The ceremony was attended by humans and Viridians alike, though whispers followed them everywhere. Some said it was beautiful. Others said it was foolish. Taehyun did not care. He looked at Jiwoo standing beside him and nothing else mattered. When they exchanged vows, Jiwoo spoke in Korean, words she had practiced for weeks. I choose this, she said. I choose you. I choose to burn bright instead of fading slowly. Whatever time we have, it will be enough. Taehyun smiled through tears. Then let us make it count. They kissed while the crowd cheered and whispered, celebrated and judged. And somewhere in the distance, the first stars of evening began to appear in the purple sky. 2 years of marriage had taught them both how to navigate two worlds. Taehyun learned to sleep in the cooler temperatures Jiwoo preferred. Jiwoo learned to appreciate the spicy foods he loved, even though they made her eyes water. They built a life together in the spaces between their differences. finding joy in small compromises and shared laughter. Then the warnings came from the outer systems. Jiwoo received the first report during a quiet morning. She was reading while Taehyun made breakfast in the human way, with eggs and toast and coffee that smelled like burnt earth. The message made her stop mid-sentence. "What is wrong?" Taehyun asked, seeing her expression change. "The Kreth Dominion has entered our territory," she said quietly. 3 of their warships crossed into the neutral zone. Taehyun set down his coffee cup. He had heard of the Kreth from intelligence briefings. They were conquerors, a species that believed in expansion through force. They had destroyed 2 civilizations in the past century. "Is it war?" he asked. "Not yet, but it might be soon." The situation worsened over the following weeks. The Kreth sent an ultimatum to both the Viridian Empire and humanity. Surrender half their territory or face complete destruction. They gave them 30 days to decide. Jiwoo was called to the Imperial Command Center. Taehyun went with her, now serving as an official liaison between human and Viridian forces. The center was a massive building filled with tactical displays and strategic maps. Generals and admirals argued about the best response. "We should negotiate," one admiral said. "Give them some of the outer colonies. Buy ourselves time." "Giving them anything shows weakness," another argued. "They will just demand more next time." "We have not fought a real war in 3 centuries, a general pointed out. "Our forces are trained, but they have no combat experience. The Kreth fight constantly. They are stronger than us." Jiwoo listened to them all, her face unreadable. Finally, she spoke. "What do the humans recommend?" All eyes turned to Taehyun. He felt small in this room, full of beings twice his size, military leaders who had forgotten more about war than he had ever learned. But he had studied human military history. He knew what his people did when faced with impossible odds. "Do not negotiate," he said firmly. "Do not give them anything. Prepare for war." "You speak very confidently for someone whose species has never fought in space," an admiral said coldly. "My species has fought everywhere," Taehyun replied. "On land, in sea, in air, in space. We have fought wars that should have destroyed us and survived. We know what it takes to win, and what is that?" Jiwoo asked softly. Taehyun met her eyes. "The willingness to pay any price, to sacrifice anything, to fight not just to survive, but to win completely. No half measures, no compromises, total war." The room went silent. Viridians did not think about war that way. They thought of it as a game with rules, a contest with honor. The idea of total war, of fighting without limits, disturbed them. But Jiwoo nodded slowly. "Then that is what we must prepare for." She was appointed Supreme Commander of the Joint Defense Forces, the first Viridian to lead both human and alien troops in battle. Taehyun volunteered immediately to serve under her command as a liaison officer. She tried to talk him out of it. "You are a diplomat, not a soldier," she said when they were alone. "You do not need to fight." "Yes, I do," he said simply. "My people will be fighting. How can I ask them to risk everything if I stay safe? I could lose you." Her voice cracked slightly. "In this war, I could lose you." He took her hands in his. "You could lose me anyway. I am human. We are fragile, remember? I could get sick. I could have an accident. Death finds us all eventually. At least this way I get to fight beside you." She pulled him close and they stood together in the fading light. Outside, the first human warships were arriving to join the Viridian fleet. Small vessels compared to the massive Viridian dreadnoughts, but heavily armed and crewed by people who had studied warfare for thousands of years. Jiwoo began training with the human forces to understand their methods. What she saw both impressed and disturbed her. Human soldiers trained for scenarios that no Viridian would consider, fighting in damaged ships with no life support, continuing missions after catastrophic injuries, sacrificing themselves to save others. One day, she watched a training exercise where human pilots practiced ramming their fighters into enemy ships. The simulation showed them dying again and again, their ships exploding on impact. They practiced it until they could execute it perfectly. "This is madness," she said to the human commander, a woman named Somin. "You are training your people to die," Somin smiled grimly. "No, Commander. We are training them to make their deaths count. There is a difference. Every human knows they will die someday. We just choose to make it mean something." Jiwoo thought about that conversation for days. She began to understand what Taehyun had tried to tell her years ago. Humans did not fear death the way Viridians did. They accepted it as inevitable and made plans around it. They were terrifying because they had already accepted their own mortality. Tae-hyun showed her classified human military files one night. She read through tactical manuals that discussed acceptable casualty rates and acceptable losses, documents that analyzed the psychological impact of watching your friends die and how to keep fighting anyway. Strategic theories about how to win wars through sheer determination even when outmatched. "This is what you are," she said quietly, looking at the files. "This is what I married." "Yes," Tae-hyun said. "We are not always gentle. We are not always kind. But we survive. We always survive." The 30 days passed too quickly. The Kreth sent another message. They had interpreted the preparation as refusal. War was now inevitable. The Kreth fleet was already moving toward Viridian space, 300 warships strong. The combined human and Viridian force numbered barely 100 ships. The night before deployment, Ji-woo and Tae-hyun sat together on their balcony. The sky was clear, and they could see the orbital shipyards where the fleet was gathering. Lights moved between the stars' ships preparing for battle. "I am afraid," Ji-woo admitted, "not of dying. I am afraid of living without you. I am afraid of winning this war and coming home to emptiness." Tae-hyun turned to face her. "Then remember what you told me when we got married. Remember that you chose to burn bright instead of fading away. Whatever happens tomorrow, we will face it together." "Together," she repeated. He kissed her then, soft and desperate, trying to memorize the feeling. When they finally pulled apart, tears ran down both their faces. "Promise me something," Tae-hyun said. "If I fall in battle, do not let it break you. Do not let grief stop you from living. Promise me you will keep burning." "I promise," Ji-woo whispered. "If you promise to fight with everything you have, promise to come back to me." "I will try," he said. "I will try with everything I am." They held each other as the night grew colder and the stars continued their slow dance across the sky. Tomorrow they would go to war. Tomorrow they would face an enemy that wanted to destroy everything they loved. Tomorrow they would discover what it truly meant to fight for survival. But tonight they had each other. Tonight they were still together, and that would have to be enough to carry them through whatever came next. The Crimson Nebula earned its name from the red dust that filled the space between stars. It was beautiful and deadly, a place where sensors struggled to work and navigation required skill and luck in equal measure. It was also the only path between Kreth space and the heart of Viridian territory. Ji-woo stood on the bridge of the command dreadnought, watching tactical displays that showed the position of every ship in her fleet. 50 Viridian warships, their weapons charged and shields at maximum. 30 human vessels, smaller but faster, moving in formations that seemed chaotic but were actually precisely calculated. 20 support ships carrying supplies and medical facilities. Against them came the Kreth Armada. 300 ships, all of them designed for one purpose, destruction. "They outnumber us 3-1, her tactical officer said quietly. "Commander, we should consider falling back to a defensive position." "No," Ji-woo said firmly. "Here we can use the nebula to our advantage. Here we fight." On her personal display she could see the human ships. Tae-hyun was aboard the destroyer named Gwangju, a ship named after a city on Earth where humans had once fought for freedom against impossible odds. He had sent her a final message before communication silence began. Just 3 words. "I love you." The Kreth fleet emerged from the nebula's edge like sharks moving through blood-red water. Their ships were dark and angular, covered in weapon emplacements that glowed with threatening light. They did not attempt communication. They simply attacked. The battle began with a wall of plasma fire that lit up the nebula like a second sun. Viridian shields absorbed the first volley, but the sheer power behind it made the ships shudder. Ji-woo gave orders calmly, directing her fleet to respond with precision strikes. The Viridian forces fought well. Their ships moved in perfect formation, their weapons fire coordinated and efficient. They destroyed 3 Kreth vessels in the first exchange and damaged a dozen more. But the Kreth kept coming, wave after wave, accepting losses that would have made any other species retreat. 2 hours into the battle, the Viridian lines began to buckle. The dreadnought Shield of Honor exploded when 3 Kreth ships focused all their fire on it. The carrier Dawn's Light lost its engines and began drifting, helpless. Casualties were mounting faster than the medical ships could handle them. "Commander," her tactical officer said, his voice shaking, "we are losing. We should retreat while we still can." Jiwoo looked at the tactical display. He was right. By every logical analysis, they were defeated. The Kreth had lost 60 ships, but they still outnumbered the combined fleet 2-1. The Viridian forces had fought bravely, but bravery was not enough against such overwhelming numbers. Then the human ships did something that no one expected. They broke formation and charged directly at the Kreth fleet. "What are they doing?" the tactical officer gasped. "That is suicide." Jiwoo watched in horror and awe as 30 human ships accelerated toward 300 enemy vessels. They were not retreating. They were not trying to survive. They were attacking with a ferocity that made the Kreth formation waver. The human ships were too small to destroy Kreth dreadnoughts with their weapons alone. So they became weapons themselves. The first human ship to fall was the frigate Sol. Its weapons were destroyed, its shields collapsed, its hull breached in a dozen places. Instead of retreating, the captain aimed his dying ship at a Kreth carrier and pushed the engines to maximum. The collision created a fireball visible across the entire battlefield. Both ships were destroyed instantly, along with 2 smaller Kreth vessels caught in the explosion. It should have been the end. One small victory bought with death, but it was just the beginning. More human ships followed. Some were already damaged beyond repair. Others still had fight left in them but chose this path anyway. They sang as they died. Jiwoo could hear it on the open channels. Human voices raised in battle songs, war cries, defiant screams that declared they would not surrender, would not retreat, would not stop fighting until their last breath. The destroyer Incheon, engines failing, crashed into a Kreth command ship at near light speed. The explosion was so bright that sensors had to filter it or risk being overwhelmed. The heavy cruiser Mokpo, all weapons destroyed, turned itself into a battering ram and took 3 enemy ships with it into oblivion. And Taehyun's ship, the Gwangju, fought like a creature possessed. Jiwoo watched his ship on her display, her heart in her throat. The Gwangju had taken heavy damage early in the battle. 1 engine was gone. Weapons were firing on emergency power. Life support was failing. By all rights, the ship should have retreated. Instead, it pushed deeper into the Kreth formation. Taehyun's voice came over the command channel, clear and steady despite the chaos. "All Viridian ships fall back to defensive positions. Let us make a path for you." "Negative, Gwangju," Jiwoo said, her voice breaking. "Retreat. That is an order." "Sorry, Commander," Taehyun replied, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "Humans do not follow orders when we know a better way. We will buy you the time you need. Use it well." The Gwangju's engines flared bright, burning fuel that should have been saved for retreat. The ship accelerated toward the largest Kreth vessel, a massive battleship that served as the enemy flagship. Kreth fighters swarmed around the destroyer, firing constantly, tearing pieces off its hull. Jiwoo watched, unable to look away, unable to breathe. She wanted to order the fleet to support him, to save him, but she knew that would waste the sacrifice he was making. "I love you," she whispered, too quiet for the communication systems to pick up. "I love you. Please do not do this, please." But Taehyun could not hear her, or perhaps he chose not to answer. The Gwangju pushed through the enemy fire, its hull glowing red from plasma impacts. Half the ship was on fire. The other half was exposed to vacuum. Still it flew forward, propelled by dying engines and human determination. In the final moments before impact, Taehyun sent one last message. Not to the fleet, not to command, but directly to Jiwoo on their private channel. "Remember our promise. Keep burning." Then the Gwangju struck the Kreth flagship at a speed that turned metal into energy. The explosion created something that looked like a newborn star. It lit up the entire Crimson Nebula, turning the red dust into gold and white and blinding light. The Kreth flagship shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. The shockwave destroyed 6 nearby enemy ships and damaged 24 more. For a moment, there was total silence on the battlefield. Both sides seemed frozen by what they had just witnessed. Then the remaining human ships attacked with renewed fury. They had seen their brother ship die and chose to follow its example. They stopped fighting to survive and started fighting to make their deaths mean something. The Kreth forces, so confident moments before, began to falter. They had never faced an enemy like this. An enemy that treated death not as something to fear, but as a weapon to be used. An enemy that refused to retreat even when logic demanded it. The Viridian fleet, inspired by the human sacrifice, rallied and pushed forward. Jiwoo gave orders through tears she could not stop. She directed her ships to strike at the gaps the humans had created in the Kreth formation. She coordinated attacks on the now leaderless enemy fleet. The battle raged for another hour, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Kreth broke and ran, their fleet shattered, their confidence destroyed. They left behind wreckage and bodies and the memory of the humans who had burned across the battlefield like fallen stars. When the shooting finally stopped, Jiwoo stood alone on the bridge. Around her, officers celebrated the victory. But she could not celebrate. She looked at the tactical display where the Gwangju had been, saw only empty space and slowly cooling debris. In the heart of that debris, where Taehyun's ship had struck the enemy flagship, there was still a glow. The collision had been so violent that the space itself seemed to shimmer with residual energy. It looked like a dying star, beautiful and terrible. A monument to sacrifice written in fire and light. Jiwoo touched the display where the glow pulsed faintly and whispered the words she had said on their wedding day. It was enough. Whatever time we had, it was enough. But even as she said it, she knew she was lying. 3 months after the battle, Jiwoo returned to the Crimson Nebula. The war was over. The Kreth Dominion had sued for peace after their devastating defeat, their confidence shattered by an enemy that refused to die quietly. Across the galaxy, people spoke of the Battle of Crimson Nebula in whispers and songs. They spoke of the humans who had turned themselves into weapons, who had burned across the battlefield like falling stars. But Jiwoo came back to remember just one human. The memorial floated in the exact spot where the Gwangju had struck the Kreth flagship. It was a simple structure made of metal and crystal, built by both human and Viridian hands working together. Inside it were the names of every human who had died in the battle. At the center, in a place of honor, was Taehyun's name written in both Korean and Viridian script. The space around the memorial still glowed faintly. Engineers had studied the phenomenon and explained it was residual radiation from the collision, harmless but persistent. It would last for decades, they said, a slowly fading reminder of what had happened here. Jiwoo thought it looked like a star dying slowly, spending its last light. She floated alone in her small shuttle, staring at the memorial. Around her, the red dust of the nebula moved in slow patterns, and somewhere in the distance, ships passed on trading routes that would not exist if the battle had been lost. "Hello, Taehyun," she said quietly to the empty space. "I came to tell you we won. I know you already know, but I wanted to say it anyway. We won because of you. Because of all of you." She closed her eyes and remembered. His smile when he tasted coffee for the first time on Viridius Prime. His laugh when she tried to teach him Viridian dancing and he kept stepping on her feet. His serious face when he talked about human history, about all the terrible and wonderful things his species had done. His last words, "Remember our promise. Keep burning." "I am trying," she whispered. "I am trying to keep burning, but it is hard without you. Everything is hard without you." A sound made her open her eyes. Another shuttle was approaching the memorial. She recognized the markings as human military. For a moment, she considered leaving, unable to face other people in her grief. But something made her stay. The shuttle docked with hers and a woman stepped through the airlock. She was young, maybe 30 years old in human terms, with features that reminded Jiwoo painfully of Taehyun. She wore a military uniform with commander's insignia. "You are Jiwoo," the woman said. It was not a question. "Yes. I am Dayun, Taehyun's sister." Jiwoo felt her breath catch. She had never met Taehyun's family. They lived on Earth too far away for easy visits. They had spoken over video calls a few times, brief conversations where everyone was polite but clearly uncertain how to connect across such vast differences. "I am sorry," Jiwoo said, the words inadequate. "I'm so sorry for your loss." "For our loss," Dayun smiled sadly. "I did not come for apologies. I came to thank you. Thank me." "For what?" "I could not save him. I could not stop him from doing what he chose to do," Daeun interrupted gently. "From dying the way he wanted, fighting for something he believed in. You gave him that choice. You gave him 2 years of happiness before the end. My brother wrote to me about you. Every message was full of joy. He said you taught him what it meant to truly live." Jiwoo could not stop the tears anymore. They came in waves. Grief she had held back for 3 months finally breaking free. Dayun moved closer and took her hand, this small human woman comforting a being twice her size. "He loved you so much," Dayun said. "He knew what would happen. He knew from the moment he volunteered for the mission that he might not come back. But he went anyway because that is what humans do. We fight for the people we love. They stood together in silence, two women from different worlds united by the memory of one man. Finally, Jiwoo spoke. I wrote something. About the battle. About what the humans did. About Taehyun. She pulled out a datapad. It is being published in military academies across Viridian space. Every officer will study it. Every soldier will learn what your brother and his crew did. Daeun took the datapad and read quietly. Jiwoo had titled it simply, On Human Warfare and the Price of Victory. It was a detailed analysis of the battle, but also something more. It was a love letter written in military language, a way to honor Taehyun by making sure no one ever forgot what he had sacrificed. This is good, Daeun said, her voice thick with emotion. This is how he should be remembered. Not just as my brother, not just as your husband, but as someone who showed the galaxy what humanity means. What does it mean? Jiwoo asked. I thought I understood, but now I am not sure. Is it the willingness to die? The refusal to surrender? Daeun considered the question. It is both those things, but it is also more. Humanity means choosing to love even when loss is inevitable. It means building things that will outlast us. It means fighting not because we think we will win, but because fighting is the right thing to do. My brother loved you knowing he would die long before you. He chose that pain because the alternative was never loving at all. I do not know if I would make that same choice, Jiwoo admitted. If I had known how much this would hurt, I do not know if I would have chosen to love him. Yes, you would, Daeun said firmly. You already proved it. You chose to keep living after he died. You chose to honor his memory instead of drowning in grief. You chose to keep burning. That is what he asked of you. And you are doing it. More ships arrived over the following hours. Humans and Viridians came to pay respects at the memorial. Some left flowers and tokens. Others simply stood in silence, remembering the battle and the price that had been paid for peace. A young Viridian soldier approached Jiwoo hesitantly. Commander Jiwoo, I wanted to thank you for writing about the battle. I read your work. It is required reading at the academy now. Because of it, I understand humans better. I understand what they did for us. What do you think they did? Jiwoo asked. The young soldier thought carefully. They showed us that we had forgotten how to fight. We had grown comfortable. We thought war was a game with rules. But the humans remembered that war is about survival, and survival requires sacrifice. They reminded us what it means to care about something more than your own life. After he left, Daeun smiled. See, you are keeping his legacy alive. Every person who reads your work, every soldier who learns from the battle, they are all touched by what Taehyun did. He is not gone. He is scattered across the galaxy in every life he influenced. As the day faded into evening, the crowds began to leave. Daeun prepared to return to her ship, back to Earth and a family that was missing one member. Will you be all right? She asked Jiwoo. Eventually, Jiwoo said. I have centuries to learn how to be all right. That is a very long time to miss someone. Yes, Daeun agreed, but it is also a very long time to honor their memory, to make sure they meant something. My brother got 2 years with you. You get centuries to tell his story. After Daeun left, Jiwoo stayed at the memorial until she was completely alone. The space around her shimmered with that strange glow, the radiation slowly fading but not yet gone. She reached out as if she could touch it, as if she could touch him one more time. I will keep burning, she said to the stars and the dust in the memory of the man she loved. I will keep burning until I fade away completely. And when I do, maybe I will find you again in whatever comes after. Maybe we will have more than 2 years. Maybe we will have forever. The glow pulsed once like a heartbeat, like the dying star was answering her. Jiwoo chose to believe it was Taehyun saying he heard her, saying he would wait, saying that their love was strong enough to survive even death. She turned her shuttle back toward Viridius Prime, toward the life she had to continue living, toward the future that would be shaped by the sacrifices of the past. Behind her, the memorial floated in eternal vigil, and the space around it glowed like a fallen star that refused to completely die. And in military academies across a dozen worlds, students read about the Battle of Crimson Nebula. They learned about the humans who turned themselves into weapons. They studied the tactical decisions and strategic implications. But most importantly, they learned about Commander Jiwoo and Envoy Taehyun, about a love that crossed species and survived death, about two people who chose to burn bright instead of fading away. The story spread. It became legend, and in becoming legend it became immortal, just like the love that inspired it.